On their own, stories are not solutions to the overwhelming pain of the world. Instead, they keep us connected through our values, our sense of self. They echo with resilience, defiance, and the wisdom of those who came before us.
During our monthly meetings, we built something you can't see or touch, but each one of us can feel. We learned to trust each other with our stories, our ideas, and our peace. We got to put to work the skills that we have learned, to listen, care, and feel. Our projects are the manifestation of all our work, and it reaches past what we do and say in these meetings.
In some strange and magical way, being forced to sit with her for an hour or so, listening to her storytelling, gave me a new sense of appreciation for my aunt, and the role she plays in preserving not only herself and her childhood, but also the people who are no longer with us.
Our work is alive now, and this is bigger than just us.
She grew up in communist Czechoslovakia and was the only Jew in her grade.
Growing up in Cerritos, a diverse community in the 70s and 80s, Mubarak was the only Palestinian Muslim American, besides his sisters, and the only Muslim at his elementary school.
So my uncle grew up in Eritrea, a country in East Africa. He was one of 10 children and grew up very family-oriented.
My mom was born and grew up for the first 5 years of her life in Guyana, which, if you don't know, is a majorly black community in South America.
He's from New York, specifically the Upper West Side, which is like predominantly Jewish
He went
area.
to a Jewish high school, which is called like a yeshiva, which is like a traditional Orthodox kind of Jewish high school.
He was born in Dearborn, Michigan, which is the highest Arab population in the U.S.
She moved from Israel to America.
She was born and raised in California. She is also a member of the Shia Ismaili branch of Islam.
Born and raised in Yorkshire, which is in England, and didn't feel connected at all to a Jewish community.
Our elder was born in Libya into a family of Egyptian teachers.
Hassan grew up in Gaza, in a world that most of us can barely imagine.
He did not grow up very religious, but he did have a bar mitzvah.
Growing up, he had a strict religious household. They all ate halal. They all prayed every Friday at the mosque.
My favorite aspect was tzedakah. He felt like it was the best part of all of the unique aspects of Judaism.
For my grandma, the Muslim community had a huge impact on her life. From a young age, she went to Jamaat Khana with her family, which is our mosque, and learned many of her life lessons here.
At this young age of 5, she began exploring her Jewish faith. She would pray every night, something she said she'll vividly remember for the rest of her life. She prayed to be with her mom again, but later was taught by her mom to pray to God for the strength to get through things, not for situations to change.
Islam wasn't just a part of his life, it was his life. His faith wasn't something separate from his identity. It was the lens through which he saw the world every day.
I saw how she was always the first to join into the service, her prayer book open in hand, eyes fixed to the bima, chanting.
She was told that she was only let in because her maiden name, Cohen, was sometimes Irish. As it turned out, the sorority would not allow black or Jewish people in.
She distinctly remembers an incident in 6th grade during the first anniversary of 9/11. She was told that she could not sing the national anthem because her people were the ones that caused the turmoil.
Oh, my grandfather did have to flee Nazi Germany.
Since Amu, or Uncle Tariq, is Palestinian, he mentioned that many people label him as a political animal.
When my mom was at high school, I mentioned before she went to a Christian high school. She was one of the only Muslim people there. Alongside her were many other Jewish people. And in a predominantly Christian school, they kind of didn't know what to do with them whenever they celebrated holidays or their Christianity. They would put all of the people of other religions in the library just for the day.
She's talked about how her Jewishness wasn't really defined until she was a teenager, because under communism, while at school, like if anyone asked her, she'd be like, yes, I am Jewish, but it wasn't something that she or her family really wanted to advertise, just to keep safe.
A classmate once told him, judgmentally, "You don't believe Jesus was crucified," and he remembered sinking his head into his arms and wanting to cry.
Unfortunately, before he turned 18, he had to flee the country due to a draft.
So she came with my mom when she was like a baby, and my Saba, her husband, stayed behind and was actually fighting in the Yom Kippur War, like as they were immigrating.
As the partition between India and Pakistan occurred, a few years after she was born, she was forced to migrate on foot from Hyderabad, which is almost central India, all the way to Pakistan, which is a very long walk.
Harry was one of the few survivors in our family. He was what's called a hidden child, meaning he hid in a variety of basements and attics in Brussels during the Holocaust. He was the first survivor Debbie ever met, and the first one she ever painted.
His extended family, his childhood friends, and his neighbors, almost all of them were killed. His grandparents' home, the place where they gathered every Thursday night, where they laughed and shared meals, was destroyed. The only people who survived were his immediate family, and even then they had to flee on foot through unimaginable danger just to get to Egypt.
His dad fled the Holocaust and lived in Panama for a while before moving to New York.
When he traveled to Jerusalem for the first time at just 7 years old, he suddenly felt like he fit right in, saying, "OMG, these are my people." One specific moment that made him feel especially at home was when his sister called their taxi driver Amu, which means uncle in Arabic, and that's also what I call him, Amu Tariq. It demonstrated the familial relationships between strangers in Palestine, a place where he finally felt he belonged.
She explained to us that her heart is still really in Israel, and even though she grew up in Slovakia, she feels that she's Israeli before she's Slovak.
She moved to Israel to find more of a place of belonging.
They wanted their older son to learn English first and then their native language afterwards. They wanted their children to be Americanized and to really blend in with the American community and not face the same hardships, whether it was language or culture barriers that they faced when they were immigrating.
His mom was afraid that he and his siblings would grow up American and lose their roots. They wanted him to know where he truly came from a small Palestinian village of Lifta near Jerusalem.
She would not respond to my mom in English. She really wanted my parents to learn their native tongue, which is Hebrew, because they felt that it really had an important part of like their culture.
He didn't really feel the same as the other Arabs in his community, even though he was an Arab. Instead, he found his true meaning in sports.
Journey isn't just a story about being Muslim or about 9/11. It's a story about resilience, about growing through adversity, and about finding strength in our own minorities.
To know what kind of woman Sipra is with how much she cares about her community. When I was turning 12 years old in COVID, we did like a drive-by birthday party, and her husband Scott, even though they're like in their 60s or 70s, were the first people in line at the drive-by by my house with pink balloons sticking out of their car and huge smiles on their faces, which really like stuck out to me as how much she cares about the community that she built because it wasn't handed to her.
Whenever she feels dejected, she remembers the strength of her grandmother, who fled Palestine through Syria to find a better life for her children, while at the same time leaving the love of her life, her husband. Her grandmother, who presented a strong front so that her children and grandchildren could prosper and thrive.
Debbie was so appreciative of her grandparents and the home they had given her, so much so she felt she needed to help them however she could. One way was taking off her grandfather's wingtip leather shoes whenever he belly flopped onto the sofa after a long day of standing over teeth. The main focus of the vast majority of her artwork throughout the years has been the painting, sculpting, glass blowing, and upcycling of shoes.
Hassan studied harder than anyone, pushed himself through impossible circumstances, and ended up becoming one of the top medical students in Gaza. Somehow, even with everything happening around him, he still had a hope that he could make a difference.
The core question that has shaped his life, a question that he still asks himself today, which is, what can I contribute to the community I belong to?
Nearing the end of our call, Beth said, Learning the words of our songs is like the password to the club. And what is faith without a community to be in it with? Beth shows us a life is nothing without community, without group sing.
I have felt continuously supported in my spaces, but I noticed this wasn't the same for Sepra.
My perception of Beth was of someone devoutly religious. Taking this time to talk with her and hear her stories, I began to understand her observance a little differently. And I think her phrase, group sing, even encapsulates the essence of Beth herself. Maybe each time she joins a song in synagogue, book out, page turned, piety isn't her top priority. Maybe she finds the most meaning in the singing with others rather than the singing itself.
He kind of has a greater fear of having to flee a country or like this idea of like escape more than I do.
I remember when we were driving on the freeway and he said, "Is this what freedom feels like?"
What we learn from his story is our identities are never static. They are shaped by the experiences we live through, by the people we meet, and by the challenges we face. In a world that often seeks to divide us, we can always choose to connect to our shared humanity and stories.
Both our role models emphasize the importance of dialogue in achieving peace, fulfillment, and ease for their people and themselves. Thus, how do we allow for the exchange of ideas for the whole of our communities, even the extremes? This is a question for you all and for us to figure out in the future.
Storytelling isn't a solution to the insurmountable problems. It's a balm, a salve, a comfort in a painful moment. Stories help us rehumanize each other and connect deeply with each other, which is how we stay resilient in the face of overwhelming despair.